everyone. Thank you for joining Cafe 229. My name is Joanne Chen, and I'll be your host. I'm very happy to introduce our speaker tonight,
You should mute.
who was a former
Maybe
Zen
just
monk when
lower
I
the
met
volume
him.
maybe a
And
little bit.
now he's a mental health counselor and still engaging in
Yeah, that's
teaching
good.
about Dharma on mindfulness and insightful living. Let's welcome David Listen. Hi, David.
Hi, Joanne. Thanks for having me.
So David, as a practitioner myself, I'm curious about the differences and connections between mindfulness and mental health professionals. I have a few questions I would like to ask you. So let's start with the mental health profession. Can you explain what you do as a mental health professional?
Okay, sure. So my title is a mental health counselor. It's one of many different professions within the mental health profession. For example, you have social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists. They're all within the same field, but they just have different specialties. So as a mental health counselor, you could say my specialty or the area of focus is on working directly with people on helping them overcome their mental health barriers or the difficulties they have in their life, especially with their mind and their behavior.
Oh, okay, that's great. So why do people go to mental health professionals? And if they meditate already, would that be enough? Would not be enough for them? So how can they use mental health professionals to add on to that?
Mm-hmm. Right. So let's say they already have some sort of meditation or mindfulness practice. Why would they come?
Yes.
It's a good question. Because some people may feel that, they're struggling in their life, they're suffering somehow from some sort of psychological distress. So, for example, some people have more anger issues that becomes their difficulty. Other people may have addictions, whether it's substance addictions or addictions to anything.
Mm-hmm.
Other people may have thought disorders, or you could just say thought patterns, which cause a lot of problems for them. This could be thinking in ways that just irritates themselves, where they have a lot of intrusive thoughts that come into their mind, which it bothers them and they can't do anything about it. Or they could have thought patterns and habits that just make it difficult for them to function in daily life. And it may even make it difficult for them to communicate with other people.
I see.
Those are just some ailments or some kinds of distress that people have when they would reach out to a mental health professional. Even if they were meditating and trying to practice mindfulness, they may still have quite a lot of difficulty with these different mental health issues.
I see.
Yeah.
So is that what you do as a mindfulness and meditation teacher, or is it different? I guess my question is how different it is to you.
So your question is like, what's the difference between just helping someone with mindfulness and meditation versus actually counseling them?
Yes.
Okay. There could be a lot of overlap.
Okay.
And in some cases, it's very different. So for example, someone may be suffering from, let's say, attention difficulties. A lot of people talk about ADHD these days, kind of attention deficit or hyperactivity. It's called a disorder. We could also just think of it as a pattern. So sometimes children may have this, sometimes adults have it throughout their whole life. It's a difficulty managing their attention. So for example, they could want to do something today, make a plan. I want to do this, I want to do that today. But they may end up getting so distracted by something else and completely forget about their initial intention and may be completely absorbed in, say their phone or something else that just pulled their attention away from their initial intention. So, as a meditation teacher or mindfulness teacher, well, I or someone could teach this person techniques for gathering their attention or focusing their attention, training their mind, excuse me, training their mind to have a more stable attention, and also training their mind to return to their initial activity that they intended upon if they do get distracted. So a meditation teacher, a mindfulness teacher is focusing more on training a person's mind through mindfulness, through meditation. As a mental health counselor, we may do some of that. We may have certain trainings for people and either recommend them to take a course on mindfulness or guide them through these practices. However, as a mental health counselor or a mental health professional, what's different is that we're helping people to explore more deeply some of the sources of their barrier. So, for example, a person who experiences some attention difficulties, it may be partially due to some of the deep pain they feel. So they may have certain things that happened to them in the past at any point in their life, which made it very difficult to even to bear the memories and the emotions that they feel.
Mm.
And because of that, they may find some way to distract themselves. It's too uncomfortable to be with how they feel. So their attention, they may develop a habit of being distracted or distracting themselves by doing something else. So part of the mental health professional's role is to help a person to explore more deeply those causes of their current symptom, of their current distress. And by helping them explore and try to see what the causes are, then they may naturally be able to heal from those pains or from those sufferings.
Okay.
So I think in general, a meditation teacher, a mindfulness teacher is more training in a methodology of mindfulness. Mental health counselor can do that, but focuses more on helping the person develop insight into their own cause of suffering, cause of distress.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds very mutually beneficial and complementary to each other.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Very good. Because you mentioned about the sufferings, and that is something mindfulness practitioners talk about and also try to cultivate. So that is something compassion there. So how does compassion fit into this practice then?
Practice of mindfulness?
Well, I guess both in your profession and as in the mindfulness field.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, it's a great question. In the ethics of the mental health profession, part of it is to make sure we don't harm people. That's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Another key part of it is to make sure we bring benefit to other people. And essentially, what kind of benefit can we bring? It's helping them reduce their levels of stress and distress, and reduce their suffering, and bring them joy, or help themselves to minimize their suffering and find joy in life. So, that's basically, as I understand it, the principle of compassion. It's not only wanting to help someone, or it's definitely not just limited to being nice to people. Some people may think compassion is just being nice, right? But in order for it to be a skillful compassion, um, we need to understand the person and understand their suffering in a way that we can help them or empower them to resolve it.
Hmm. That's great. I think that yeah, that you show me something about emotional side from the counselor's point of view, and also methodological side of the mindfulness, and a combination of those two, they are very beneficial to build a skillful technique
Mm-hmm.
for one's mental health,
Mm-hmm.
from what I hear from you.
Right, right.
That's
And
wonderful. Yeah.
it also makes me think about my training as a meditation teacher or mindfulness teacher um, was mostly when I was still a monk.
Mm-hmm.
And the emphasis in one part is um, that the teacher is imparting this knowledge about the method of mindfulness. It's also imparting knowledge or giving people knowledge on how to understand themselves, the basic concepts of how to practice
Mm-hmm.
and the process. So, in a way, a teacher role, you're giving information, concepts, giving information about the method.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Whereas, as a mental health professional, in my experience, it's not about necessarily giving those things, although that is part of it. Sometimes the mental health counselor takes on the role of the teacher, but there's this other role of um, helping the person to see for themselves what is the problem, what are they struggling with, and helping the person, empowering the person to see for themselves what's the proper decision to make to get out of it or to resolve their issue. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes a teacher may, depending on their style, may just say, here's what you should do. When you're practicing, if you encounter this, do that.
Mm-hmm.
For example, teaching someone how to use the method of breathing, mindfulness of breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Some people find that as soon as they start to become mindful of their breathing, the breathing becomes unnatural and uncomfortable, and they don't know what to do. It's like, I was breathing my whole life and I was fine, but now I'm trying to be mindful of breathing and I can't breathe. I feel uncomfortable. Usually the teacher would just tell them what to do, because it's likely that they're trying too hard to concentrate, or they're trying to control their breathing in some way, trying to make the breathing be long or short. It's a matter of control and trying too hard, tension. So a teacher may just recognize that and say, well, just don't do that. You need to relax. Let your breathing be natural. Let it have its own rhythm, and just be aware of that. Okay? And then the student can just follow the instructions and continue the practice. But when a mental health professional is helping someone to deal with their deeper patterns of, let's say, anger, and how that affects their daily life, it's actually dangerous just to tell somebody what to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's dangerous to just give advice. You should do this. Just do that, and you'll be fine. For example, if you have anger issues and you have family conflicts, if a counselor wishes to say, well, you should go home and just tell your sibling this and that. Just I think that'll work. They may have their own experience and may think that may work. But if, as a mental health counselor, we were to do that, if it works, that would be great. If it doesn't work and there's even more problems that arise, then we've already, broken that ethical code of causing harm.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than giving advice, which is what many people think of as counseling or psychotherapy, they think, oh, you just go there and you get advice, right? It's not like that. It's more of the mental health professional helps the person see the problem and then to find their own means of dealing with it.
Okay.
Rather than just giving something, help the person find their way through the difficulty so that they can um, take action to deal with it. And this is empowering the person. This is also compassion. You're helping that person learn to cope with and deal with their own difficulty rather than just giving the person something.
Mm.
So I think that's another major difference between the teacher, the meditation teacher role versus the counselor or psychotherapist role.
I think that's great. Very clear definitions on both sides. Well, correct me if I'm getting it wrong. I get the from what you just said. I get the image of maybe the mindfulness teacher who is already like walk the path. So they're more like the light holder in front of you to show you the path, and they probably so the path is since they probably would guide you and say something ahead of time, and that path is pointed out clearly. And the mental health counselor seems to be the person who's walking along with the person on the way, and being there and side by side, and let the person see where the problem is. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's a very nice image analogy.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Walking with the person, and then, when there comes to a crossroad,
Mm-hmm.
the person holding a lamp doesn't just say, let's go this way.
That's
They
right.
say, well, which way should we go from here?
Yes, yeah. And then you are next to the person as a mental health professional, and then let the person decide and make that decision and be responsible for themselves
Exactly.
for that decision. Okay,
Exactly.
that's great. That kind of clarified my when I was thinking about the questions I was going to ask you. So it seems like both mental health professionals as well as mindfulness teachers, they do provide compassion and wisdom in different ways. So are they related in this area, in those two different fields? And to you, how are they related to each other?
Compassion and wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of wisdom, we could look at it in two ways. There's a wisdom that comes from knowledge or concepts, which, for example, in the practice of meditation and mindful living, there's a wisdom of the instructions. So what's the purpose of mindfulness? That needs to be clarified. And the concept of what's the purpose of mindfulness? And then how to use the method. Need explanation for that. And then also, what's the process? What's it like from this point to the final point, to the goal? There needs to be explanation there as well. So it's almost like an instruction manual if you're putting together a piece of furniture or something. Or it's also like the sciences, the science of, for example, a certain kind of sport. We need instructions and concepts to describe to a person how to do something, how to be mindful, how to live mindfully. Some people may pick it up very quickly, more intuitively, and they may not need so much conceptual knowledge. They just see and they do and they experience it. Other people, depending on their capacity or just depending on what they encounter, they may also need more explanation, especially when a person experiences something that they've never experienced in just ordinary life. For example, states of mind or feelings that are unusual can occur during the process of meditation. For example, a person could be meditating, relaxing, and at some point, all of a sudden, they don't even feel their body. And that's kind of a unique experience. I think for the most part in our daily life, we feel the presence of our body.
Mm-hmm.
In some states or some process of meditation, the body sense may disappear, or all sensation or emotional feeling may also be gone. There may also be powerful experiences of joy, or there may also just be kind of strange occurrences or hallucinations, if you will, where a person may be sitting and they see or hear things spontaneously, and it may either scare them or entice them. So at that point, they would need some explanation. Often, it can be really confusing. So there's part of the wisdom of this training is the right understanding, the right concepts and explanations. I think the same goes for mental health counseling or the mental health profession, that helping a person adjust their perspective and concepts can really benefit them. There's methodologies such as cognitive therapy. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yes.
Or cognitive behavioral therapy,
Mm-hmm.
or mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy, which part of that is to help a person adjust their perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, a person may think about themselves and think, I'm a loser. Nobody likes me. And they have a strong belief, which causes them to feel terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the process of counseling can help the person to reflect on, is this an accurate perception?
Mm-hmm.
Is this an accurate idea? Or is it possibly, come from some place that's not so accurate? It's causing you unnecessary suffering.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the concept needs to be adjusted to, well, I'm struggling now, so I feel like I'm a loser. I'm struggling now, but I have a lot of potential to move forward with my life. And all of a sudden, a person may feel hope and strength just by adjusting their concepts. So in one sense, that's kind of a kind of wisdom. On a deeper level, though, which depending on, I think it really depends upon, in the mental health field, your theoretical background.
Mm-hmm.
There's many different theoretical backgrounds to how to do therapy, psychotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of meditation and mindfulness, it also depends on the theoretical background of that as to what is really wisdom, a wisdom beyond just concepts. According to the tradition of the Buddha, um, wisdom is actually the absence of self-centeredness, the absence, you could say, of self-attachment. What does that mean? Sometimes it's referred to as no self or not self. And at first it sounds confusing and strange. If someone were to say, wisdom is to realize that you have no self, it doesn't necessarily make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But if we look more closely, if we're practicing mindful living, if we're mindfully aware of ourself, we can observe that every aspect of ourself, from our body to our feelings to our thoughts, the environment, is constantly in a flux, in change. There's nothing that we can hold on to and say, well, this is myself, or I am just this way. I am this kind of person. And we may catch ourselves saying that sometimes. Well, I'm not the kind of person who does that, right? Someone may ask us, hey, do you want to go do this or that? And it's like, well, I'm not that kind of person. I just don't do those things. That's an idea of who we are. It's a kind of story. But maybe today I'm not the kind of person who does those things, but maybe tomorrow or next year I will. So does that mean I'm the same person or a different person? Obviously, we're different. We're changing all the time. Yet, we often have kind of rigid ideas of who we are and often tell ourselves who we are, how we should be. And we have sometimes constant thinking or worrying about myself, my health, my career, my status, how people think about me. There's a lot of self-centered thinking that becomes a burden, a huge burden. And we could say is the source of most, if not all, of our other um, problems. So wisdom um, in this context is becoming aware of that problem of self-centeredness and eventually or gradually learning how to let go of that self-centered, attached, self-obsessive thinking.
Mm.
That's not a concept, although yes, it is a concept, but at some point it's an experience. It's a way of being.
Yes. That's getting into a more deeper level of practice. That's wonderful. So I guess as a layperson, a regular person who encounters a lot of different chores in our daily life, so how do we know, either from a practitioner stand or a mental health professional stand, how do we know if we are wise enough or compassionate enough in the choices we make, in things we say, in or what we do?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a good question. Maybe we don't. Maybe a lot of the time we don't. We don't know. That's actually one reason why we practice mindfulness, one reason why we go to mental health professionals, because it's possible or it's likely that everyone has some sort of blind spots or psychological blinders, meaning that we may not be aware of our problem or our issue. We may not be aware of our self-centeredness. Um, we may think we're being compassionate, and we may be doing something very kind and very kind of altruistic, helping other people, devoting our life to a certain cause. But we may not notice that at the same time, there's also some self-centered thinking and behavior there that's causing a problem. So, for example, the climate crisis is something which is being discussed these days. Whether or not we subscribe to it or not, it's in people's minds. The condition of this world, our environment, and the change of the climate, the pollution, various issues. So there are a lot of people becoming activists in this area. Actually, for a short period of time when I went to college, that's what I wanted to focus on. I wanted to focus on environmental activism and environmental conservation. I still think it's very important, but is it possible that, for example, if I was to join an environmental activist group for the sake of, I want to save the world, I want to protect everyone and all the living beings in this world, this is my wish and my intention, we could say that's a compassionate intention. But is it possible that mixed in with that I have a lot of anger
Mm.
and I have a lot of judgment towards certain people who I think are not taking care of the environment, or certain people who seem to be focused on other things like maybe economics or production. So some people may think that it's important that we continue to use the resource of oil, for example.
Mm.
They value that there's, this is a resource that fuels our whole economy, etc. They have their perspective. From an environmental activist perspective, they may think this is ridiculous. Using oil and developing this, the manufacturing and transporting of this, it's destroying our planet. I think there was just actually an oil spill recently, where a ship had, crashed, and there's oil spilling into, I think it's the Gulf of Mexico. I'm not sure. But as an activist, I may see this person and criticize them, and eventually maybe even hate this person. I may eventually even develop hate towards anybody who supports the oil industry or who is focused on the economy. And I may develop a kind of self-righteousness, thinking that, I'm a savior of the world. Look at me, I'm doing this activism. I'm saving the world. Can't you see that? And while doing something altruistic, there's this stronger self-centeredness that I am right and you or whoever is wrong. And that can lead to all kinds of, pain and suffering in myself, and as well as it can affect how I do and engage in activism. If I'm full of anger while I'm doing this engaged environmental activism, I may cause a lot of harm to people.
Mm.
This anger may cause me to, directly hurt people. Whereas a wiser kind of activism is having an altruistic ideal, wanting to help others, save the planet, so to speak. At the same time, being careful not to see oneself as something greater or special, and being careful to respect other people's perspectives, and even respect that other people may be suffering a lot, so they don't even consider the environment. They're just trying to survive themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They're not thinking about where their garbage goes when they throw it away.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is where wisdom and compassion are in balance, where there's this self-awareness, an ability to be aware of our thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and to let go of that self-attachment while engaging in a beneficial behavior for the greater society.
That's wonderful. From what you just said, it seems like increasing compassion can also help increasing the wisdom part, and vice versa. They go hand in hand together, right?
Yeah, I think
Um,
if you don't have wisdom, it's not genuine compassion, and the other way around.
yes, that is very true. At least that's what I understand about Dharma's teaching. Okay, I have one more curious question. And you have a background in both mindfulness training as well as in mental health professional training. What if someone who is a clinician, like a mental health professional, and understand that mindfulness is helpful, but does not practice him or herself? Should the person advise his or her patients to practice mindfulness? Would that be effective? As I'm curious about that.
Mm-hmm. All right. So if the clinician doesn't practice themselves, can they train other people
Yeah, or
in
yeah,
mindfulness?
I guess so. Yeah.
Right. I would say if the clinician is not a practitioner, has not been trained in mindfulness themselves, it could be dangerous to attempt to train other people. it's kind of like someone who can't fix a car who's just kind of telling somebody else, oh, just try to turn that thing and twist that thing, and not knowing what to do at all, trying to have someone fix a car, that could be disastrous. So definitely it's not a good idea to attempt to train someone by just, reading a text or reading a book and then just telling them. But I don't think there's any harm in recommending it. As a
Okay.
clinician, you could always recommend it to somebody, recommend the client to take a course somewhere, or do a retreat, meditation retreat, or some sort of mindfulness training curriculum. Yeah, that's always beneficial. Sure.
That's great. By the way, David, I went to his several retreats when he was still a monk, and I was under the training and his guidance. It was a wonderful retreat. So I guess my last question, due to the time limit, the last question is, what is the benefit of meditation retreat? And we'll close our conversation on this question.
Yeah, meditation retreat. Well, again, I think it depends where you go. It depends what the goal is of the retreat. Because nowadays there are many, many different kinds of just generic or meditation retreats that have different goals. It could even be a meditation retreat to uh, uh, help you become more successful. So it may be some meditation, but there's also a lot of other instruction that focuses on something else. So I think the goal is important. You have to know what the goal is and what the direction is of the retreat before you attend it. But in general, a meditation retreat is an opportunity where a person can put aside their daily routine and put aside all of the activities in their daily life which either distract them or can cause stress and just kind of mental dispersion. We have so many things, modern people, especially folks living in the city, have so many things to navigate in daily life. Retreat is a time to put all that aside, temporarily remove yourself from that context of daily life, and go to usually a quiet place, like a retreat center. It may not be quiet outside the retreat center, but as long as the retreat program allows us to just focus on the meditation itself, focus on mindful living, meaning we focus on learning how to sit with a relaxed body and mind, with a clear, stable body and mind. We learn how to walk that way. We learn how to eat mindfully. We train ourselves in just the simple things, like when we take a drink of water, drinking mindfully, even using the toilet mindfully, using the environment, cleaning the environment carefully, mindfully. The retreat life is so simple that it allows us to let go of the obsessive thinking about the past and future and fully immerse ourselves in our present moment, from moment to moment. So with that kind of training, we can, number one, is really calm ourselves down. On retreat, we could experience calmness and relaxation that is almost impossible to experience in the busyness of daily life. And that itself is very healing. Just to be able to fully relax and be present, that's very healing and soothing for a person. In addition to that, a person develops more insight, or we could say a greater wisdom about themselves. So in that condition of calmness, a person's able to become more clearly aware of their thoughts that arise, their feelings, and their patterns. Even though they're on retreat, they may experience or see their patterns of thinking that they've accumulated in their daily life of distraction. So on retreat, by being able to see these patterns, we actually have the opportunity to diffuse them or to release them.
Mm.
So we diffuse or release the kind of habitual thought patterns that create so much pain and so many problems, and we're able to develop true clarity and skillful behavior. So not reactive behavior, but skillful response to situations, because we are so calm and because we are so clear. So, developing retreat, in summary, is the ideal condition for a person to develop stability, clarity of mind, and insight into themselves, so that when they go back to daily life, they can live more compassionately and more skillfully.
That's a great summary. Thank you for doing that. I was going to summarize for you. That's wonderful, David. Very good. I really enjoyed tonight's talk and appreciate it. Well, thank you so much, David, for
Thanks, Joanne.
coming to give this talk. So let's open our conversation to the audience, and I'll be getting some questions for you. Okay. All right. So I have some questions here, David. Let me just go one after another. Okay. The first one from Peter. What do you think about spiritual bypassing? Sometimes a person uses spiritual practices as a psychological defense for some deeper issues. What is your take on this?
Yeah, that's a great question. Spiritual bypassing, just to maybe explain it a bit more clearly if someone's hearing that term for the first time. It's using some sort of technique, method from a spiritual tradition, meditation method even, to try and avoid pain that we experience. But at the same time, thinking that by using such a method, we're healing, or we're bettering ourselves, or improving ourselves. So, for example, a method of something I saw recently, which is the singing bowls. I think they're called singing bowls or crystal bowls, which is using sound as meditation, where a person can play or strike these bowls, listen to the sound, which is kind of very soothing and beautiful sound for most people, and feel quite good, feel calm, feel good, feel much better than before when they started. And although this method is developing a feeling of peace and a feeling of calm, which is healthy and which is healing, if a person just stops there and says, well, this is all I need to heal my pain, I just use the sound and I heal myself through sound, what happens is that they may eventually be suppressing or avoiding some of the deeper attachments or deeper psychological issues that they have. Excuse me. So, for example, they may have anger issues or addiction issues, and a lot of that may come from deep pain related to their past. So they may have these thoughts and memories of their past which plague them and which they may often ruminate about. How much they dislike a certain person, or how much they dislike themselves, or how terrible a past experience was and how it's a burden for them now. You know, they, or, including ourselves, we may ruminate on some of these things. If we simply just use sound as a way to feel peaceful, we're not really resolving the habit of rumination. we're not resolving the problem, that we still sort of torture ourselves with this negative thinking or attachment to these painful thoughts. It's the method, or the spiritual bypassing happens if we just emphasize on feeling good, or thinking that we're just doing something spiritual and healing, and trying to avoid those deeper pains. So that's the problem of spiritual bypassing. And is it a problem of the method? Like, is it the bowl problem? I don't want to make it seem like those using the bowl is a bad thing or not helpful. But the issue of spiritual bypassing, it's an attitude issue. It's that we're avoiding pain and trying to clutch onto something pleasant or something spiritual or something lofty. Um, so, in order to address it, then we need to really use a method which helps us to face the pain in whatever form that is, to face it, understand it, and only then can we be able to really heal on a deeper level.
I see. So it sounds like the method or the skill can be pros and cons depending on how you use it, right?
Right, like it's potentially any method of healing could be unsuccessful if we're avoiding the actual source of the pain. So it's not the method, it's really the attitude.
I see. So
Yeah.
the attitude is one of the most important pillar in the backbone, right?
Right.
Okay, great. The second question related to that, what kind of a personal blind spots each tradition, therapy versus Zen, is good at revealing?
Could you say that again? What's
Okay.
the question?
What kind of personal blind spots each tradition, Zen versus therapy, is good at revealing?
So, like, which tradition is better at revealing
Yeah,
some of
for
these deeper
revealing
blind
what
spots?
problem or personal blind spots, is there a particular one that works for certain blind spots? I guess that's his question.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Again, I can't say that one tradition is better than the other. I don't think that's fair, because it's possible that Zen could work very well. Uh, excuse me. Zen meditation could work very well for one person and really be ineffective for another person, whereas psychotherapy, a tradition of talk therapy, and even psychoanalysis could be more helpful for another person. Or maybe they could be done in tandem. The same person at different times in their life or at different times in their treatment could benefit from both, or even simultaneous. They practice meditation daily, but they go to psychotherapy sessions and undergo psychoanalysis, a more analytical approach to understanding their pain. So I think that's an individual thing.
Sounds very flexible. That's
Yeah,
good. It's
I
good
think it's
to know.
I think it's I think it's important as mental health counselors or psychotherapists, as well as mindfulness teachers, to be open to different traditions. It's what the person needs. It's not necessarily what we like or what we're good at.
Very good.
Yeah.
Prescribe the right medicine to treat the right problems, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Great. All right, I'm going to move on to the next question. Barry said, "Hi, David. I think I've experienced this before, but didn't really understand it well at the time. Can you explain compassion, empathy, fatigue, please?"
Yeah, this term I've heard more in the mental health profession. Also in the medical profession, for example, nurses and doctors. may complain of or speak of feeling tired or feeling this empathy fatigue, which in my understanding is feeling not only not only tired but emotionally exhausted from doing their work of day to day talking to people who suffer a lot. And by talking with these people and working with those who suffer a lot and who often will tell us their stories, and maybe even just being with this person can be challenging.
Mm.
So for a mental health professional or for a doctor, a nurse, being with someone who is under a lot of a lot of stress and in pain can be challenging. They may be yelling at you or scolding you while you're trying to help them, or even just in tears and crying. And for some professionals at some point in their practice, they may feel that it's just too much. It's so hard after a while to even hear another painful story, or it's
Mm.
so hard to even sit with someone sit with someone who is crying,
Mm.
because maybe we feel affected by it. Um, so that's my understanding of what some people call empathy fatigue. I'm not sure if that's what that person was talking about. Maybe they could comment and say, yeah, that's it, or no, that's not it. And we can continue.
Right. Well, I guess I understand what fatigue is as a teacher myself, and using Zoom to teach. We grow some fatigue with looking at laptop all day long. I don't know whether it's similar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let
Well, I
me.
think just to address that one question, maybe it's worthwhile talking about how do we deal with it.
Hmm.
Do you think?
Oh yes, please go ahead.
Okay, because um, to know about it or to experience it is one thing. How to deal with it is another. And I think, in my experience, we can approach it from two ways. One thing is what we talk about a lot as self care, making sure to find time to rest and to do things that don't require us to be actively helping others, or we shouldn't feel that we're always using our own energy to help others. If we feel that way, it's very important to make time for ourselves to rest and to not be dealing with so much of other people's pain. So part of that rest that we can gain is through sitting meditation
Mm.
or just walking. Maybe we could just call it sitting mindfully, walking mindfully in a way where we rest our senses. We don't busy ourselves by looking by looking at anything, whether it's media or anything.
Mm.
Resting our eyes, resting our ears, so to speak, resting our body, and giving ourselves time to give attention to our own difficulties.
Mm.
Because as counselors, as professionals, as teachers, maybe our students and clients think we're perfect sometimes. Maybe they have that perception. Oh, Mr. and Miss So and so, they're so perfect. They never seem to have any problems, or the way they teach, the way they work, it's so wonderful. And maybe we have the pressure to try to live up to that. But it's really important um, to rest, and to give ourselves attention to deal with some of the problems that we have. Uh, and by doing so, we'll be able to engage with our clients much better.
Mm.
The second way is that when we engage with people, if we have already cultivated a stronger mindfulness, a stronger self awareness in the very moment of engaging with our client, engaging with our student, we'll be aware of our own reaction. We'll be
Mm.
aware of our own feeling, our own thoughts, and we'll be able to not get lost in them.
mm,
not be overpowered by them.
mm,
Um, in this field, it's often called countertransference, but it
mm,
just means that when we're affected by what others say,
mhm.
if we have a greater awareness of that, we'll be able to actually diffuse or reduce the power of that being affected. We'll be less affected, more calm, and more able to um, have energy to do this work. We'll feel less fatigued.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's wonderful. Well, David, you do have a lot of questions coming in, but I think time is almost up. So I'm gonna
Okay.
have to pick one of those questions out of this. Unfortunately, just let me just
Okay.
try to decide. Try to decide what might be a good closure question.
No
Um,
pressure.
uh, okay. Um, Okay, so I guess I like this. So how does mindfulness? Oh, okay. Just let me just make the okay here. In certain, Diana Rubio has a question here. In certain cultures, psychotherapy is not well understood. Where can we read more about psychotherapy? Any book recommendations?
Um, I don't know. Actually, I mean, I'm more experienced in the field of mindfulness and just counseling rather than um, the knowing what's good resources for learning about psychotherapy. I don't know if I'm the best to give an answer to that. However, I mean, there's just so much on the web. Um, one thing is, it can be difficult to determine what's good information and what's not. Um, I think one thing to look for is a person's credentials, as well as whether or not this information about psychotherapy is uh, well received by an accredited organization
David.
or an institution.
Host.
Okay, is my microphone muted here? Can you hear me?
No, no, no. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
Yes, I'm sorry. Did I was I whispering? I'm sorry. I
yeah,
just trying to
that's
um,
okay.
find one more question to. Okay, how about one more question? I think we still have a few minutes. I like
Sure.
this one very much, which is very related to Tzu Ji's compassion in action.
Hmm.
Teen Fan asked, what is the relationship between mindfulness, service, and altruism to you?
Hmm. Okay, that's a good question. I think it was addressed earlier, with the talk about activism.
Mhm.
So I know that Suji does a lot of charity work, especially with disaster relief. Traveling around the globe to reach out to people in the midst of disaster. So, how does mindfulness apply to disaster relief? Compassion. I think that to be of service in that kind of situation, for example, in the aftermath of an earthquake, where there's a lot of destruction, there's a lot of chaos, or there's a lot of pain in the people that we're serving, it's important to have a strong mind and be prepared for that. How do we have a strong mind? Well, mindfulness is the training in mental stability, training in mental clarity, so that when we encounter situations which are challenging, whether it's disaster or whether it's just day to day challenges, the more we've established mindfulness in our daily life, the more prepared we'll be for disaster and being of service to those who are suffering greatly. Otherwise, the compassion fatigue that a person can experience in that kind of situation, is compounded or manifold compared to just doing day-to-day therapy, right? So to have mindfulness, it allows us to face challenges and face our own fears or um, our own uh, internal challenges or difficulties um, with more peace and clarity. So if we're mindful, we'll actually be of better service to people, and we'll be less affected by difficulty, and we'll be more at peace with ourselves.
Great.
That's how I understand that.
Great. Thank you so much, David, for today. And I hope you feel better soon.
Thank you.
It's difficult to talk while, it's a challenge to cough, from time to time.
Yes.
Well, I really appreciate your talk. It's very insightful and very helpful to me personally. We're so grateful to have you today with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you. So I wanted to take a couple of minutes here to introduce our next speaker, Venerable Nicholas Vreeland. He's going to be coming on board at C.A.F.E 229 on January 15th. He is a photographer, abbot of Rato Jachan in India, and director of Tibet Center in New York City. He is the subject of the feature-lengthy documentary film called Monk with a Camera. And we have a little advertisement coming up for him in a second. But I wanted to say happy holiday, everyone, and I hope to see you next month. Thank you for joining us today.